Florence Marryat. Florence Marryat wrote about 80 books, 80 stories. She was a Catholic, a devout Catholic, but she was so influential as a writer, as an actress, as an editor of the Strand magazine in London, England, that she was given permission to become a psychic researcher. Many of the stories that she wrote 3 books about spiritualism. This one in which this story came from, There Is No Death, came from her experiences which were largely built up in North America. She found it more easy to visit the seances in North America because in her home country, England, they were all kept underground because of persecution, which still persisted then. She wrote this story of the monk, which is a personal experience, where a Mrs. Uniacke visited her from Bruges in Belgium. The reason for that visit was to sit with William Eglinton, who was a trance medium for communication. She was a medium herself, and after the reading or the sitting with William Eglinton, it was so evidential that she invited him to Bruges in Belgium to give another demonstration. Florence Marryat had a sister who lived in Bruges, and her sister lived in a home that years before, in the 1560s, in the old plans of the city, where she lived at one time had been a part of a monastery and convent. When they went to sit around Mrs. Uniacke's house, the spirit teacher, Joey, of William Eglinton, informed them, it is not going to take place there. I want you to go to your sister's house, for there are very special reasons. When they sat there, a monk came through. This monk had a young lady who was a nun, who he was deeply in love with. He was so deeply in love and attracted to this young woman that he murdered her. Her remains were buried in the terrain under the house. The house always had a reputation for being very cold and uneasy. The spirit of the monk entranced William Eglinton, and the story unfolded of what had occurred. Through the process of this, we're only briefly going through it, was that they rescued this monk and raised his level of consciousness so he could become normal in spirit life again. Sometime after this seance with the monk, there was an auction house, or many auction houses in Bruges, and Florence Marryat, whose husband was Mr. Lean, visited many of these auction houses, and they came across a very large painting of a monk. And Florence Marryat was very attracted to this painting, and when she talked it over with her husband, like all men, they said it costs too much, he can't have it. But it's funny how things work out, you see, because this painting, unwittingly to them at the time, was very well sought after by collectors and art collectors. But when the painting came up, there were very few people in the auction house, and she got it very cheaply for like something like 100 Belgian francs. When she got it packed and shipped home, she hung it, and William Eglinton came through and brought through the monk again. The monk was so gracious, and he was so wanting to reward them that he was responsible for the manner in which the painting went up for auction, and he informed them that this painting that she had was St. Francis, who started the Franciscan order of monks, the order in which he belonged to, and this was his thanks for her for rescuing his soul. So we always have to be very careful when we reach areas, and when I was much younger, I used to be the medium of a rescue circle. We always have to be very careful how we don't allow our minds to run away and assume things being blacker and darker than what they actually are. We always hear children being frightened, the bogeyman is going to get you. And these are the type of elements where we build up a mentality that spirit around us is bad or it's not good. So it's important that we have to get this understanding, because there are going to be many areas of examples that are going to be shown on TV. There is most probably about an hour in different episodes of different DVDs of different motives, different organisations of spirit, of near-death experiences and so on, and of dreams. But I want you to understand that this, for the most part, is a myth. For all my years, I have never, not even when I was in Rescue Circle, did I ever come to the point where there was a spirit that was that bad. And my teacher, I do have one, always said, there are very, very few saints in this world, very few, and there are equally very few bad spirits. What we term very often as being bad spirits is our attitude towards them. And it is our attitude that has been brought about by elders when we're children, that have frightened us, or under conditions that are foreign to us, lack of understanding. And this is what we have to understand. And it is very important that we have to logically evaluate all these areas when we talk of spirit. Because what you have to remember is, when we move over to the other side, there are people like us. They are no different. We have good days and we have bad days. And when we have a bad day here, we are thought of as being ugly. And if you had a bad day in the spirit world, you're a bad ghost. So we have to be very careful.